Hey, third grade, welcome to Math Today. Today we're actually going to do a little bit of a different thing. We're going to go ahead and do a chapter review of our whole chapter 9. In chapter 9, we talked about geometry and so many different things, and I know it was spread out in between spring break and all of these other things going on in life. So we're going to review. I'm just going to do a short review. What I want you to do is I want you to first pull out your progress in mathematics book so that you can go ahead and use that as we go along. So if you could turn to page 304 in your book, we're going to start with lesson 1. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen because I actually have the book here online for you to see. So if you look here, here is lesson 1. So to remind you, lesson 1, we talked about lines. The lines are straight, and if it's talking about a line, it's specifically saying a line that goes forever in opposite directions. The next thing was a line segment. In your line segment here, you have, it ends. So it has a stopping point and a starting point. So that's what the difference is for a line segment. Here, give me 1 second here. And then the last one is array. On array, you're going to go ahead and it starts at one point and it goes on forever in another direction. So those are your first few on lines. If you go on the next page, 305, it talked about a few different types of lines. So think about a crossing street. We talked about like Dallas and Manchester and how they intersect. So intersecting lines, they meet at a common point, like it says here. Parallel lines, it's like two things going side by side. And then perpendicular lines, they intersect at square corners. So there's your first a few reminders on lesson 1. Okay, let's move on over. Let me get my thing over here. Our second lesson, if you turn your page, the page to 306, you're going to see here when we talked about angles. So angles, we talked about they're formed by two rays and they start at the same point. We talked about a right angle. It creates a nice square there in the corner and gives you a nice square corner. Acute angle, we kind of talked about how it's so cute because it's smaller. So if you took your right angle like this, you can see me on the screen on the side, and then you took it down a little bit further, it's less than a right angle. Now, if you're talking obtuse, it's going out the other way. And so remember, we did different hand things to remind us of that. So we have right, acute, and obtuse. Okay, so those are your angles that we talked about with different ones there. Okay, let's go on to lesson 3. Turn your page to page 308. And here we talked about polygons and circles. If you look, polygons, it has to be a closed, flat figure. So flat figure meaning 2D, and it has straight sides. So no, a circle is not a polygon. So we look here, review yourself on some of the different types of polygons. And then to remind you also, we have a quadrilateral. A quadrilateral is a polygon that has 4 straight sides, keyword being straight. And then you have a parallelogram, which you can read more about there. So, okay, let's turn our page. We're on to lesson 4, triangles. Okay, so we had 4 types of triangles that we focused on. Let me pull this up. The 4 triangles that we focused on were right triangles, isosceles triangles, equilateral, and scalene. So let's review some of those things. So right triangles, first off, they give us that nice right angle, which gives you that square corner. So that's what you need to remember for that. Most of the time, you'll notice it has a square corner. The second one was an isosceles triangle, and it means you have 2 sides that are the same length. So only 2. So if you look here, they marked that with each of these sides are marked. Equilateral has the name equal in it, so you have all the sides are equal in length. So if you look, every single one of these sides are the same length. And then the last one was scalene. It means every side's different length. There's no equal sides. So that's basically what you need to focus on for remembering what those different triangles are. Okay, turn your page to 312. And here we talked about congruent and similar figures. So to remind you, congruent means they have the same size, same shape. So it's basically a replica. It's the same exact thing. So these triangles here are congruent. These circles, these rectangles are not because there's different sizes. Now if we go to similar, you're saying it's similar. It looks similar. So you're saying you can have a big circle and a little circle. You could have a small triangle and a big triangle. Those are similar, but congruent means they're the same. Basically all you really need to know for that lesson. Let's move on to the next page, page 314, where we talked about ordered pairs. And if you remember, ordered pairs locate points on a graph. So here, remember we did that one worksheet where it had all these different cities and we had to locate them. So what you do here is say I said, oh, can you please find the cat? I'm first gonna start, I'm gonna go over, and I'm gonna go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so the cat's 5 over to the right and up 1. So I would write that out as 5, 1. Remember, the plane always has to go down the runway and then go up. You can't go up and then down the runway. You've got to go over and then up. Okay, let's move on to the next lesson. If you look at lesson 7, we talked about symmetry. And if you remember, we talked about how if you fold different shapes or figures, if they can be folded and it's the same on one side and the other side, then that means that you have symmetry. So for example, we looked at a lot of different letters that have symmetry, or even this butterfly in the picture here has symmetry because if I fold it, it's going to be the same on both sides. So you're going to see if it has a line of symmetry. Sometimes you can see how many lines you can add in, or if like in this circle, you have multiple lines of symmetry. Okay, if you turn over just one page to page 317, you go ahead and go to where we talked about transformations. Kind of sounds like a transformer. So if you look at transformations here, we talked about how you could take an object and you could slide it, you could flip it, or you could turn it. So if you slide it, it's called a translation. Okay, so it's kind of like if you take English to Spanish or Spanish to English. Same words, different translation. If you do a flip, or it's called a reflection. So think about if you look in a mirror, the opposite's going to be shown. So a flip or a reflection. And then the last one, turn, it's just you rotate it or you move it around a point. So we had different things here for this one here. Number 1, the pencil has been flipped. So that means it's a reflection, whereas here it's been moved from one point to the next. That means it's a translation. It did a slide, okay? Turn your page one more time in your book to page 318. And if you remember with this lesson on solid figures, we actually made our own marshmallow things right before spring break with marshmallows and Q-tip and with marshmallows and toothpicks to make our own solid figures. And we were able to see how there's faces on different solid figures, and then we talked about the different types of solid figures, like a cylinder, sphere, pyramid, cone, and rectangular prism. A solid figure is a 3D object. So we talked about how when we did the toothpick and marshmallow activity, the toothpicks were our edges and the marshmallows were our vertex or vertices. So just a few different things to remind yourself on how to count each of those items of the faces. Now the faces are each of the flat surfaces surrounded by all those edges and vertices. Okay, we're almost there, just a few more lessons. So just a few days ago, we talked about perimeter, so I'm going to give you 1 or 2 reminders of that. Perimeter is around a figure. So turn to page 320. So distance around a plane figure. So all you got to do for perimeter is add up each of the lengths of the sides. So for here, it has this quite the figure and has all these different lengths on the sides. All they did is add them up and make sure you put your measurement unit, like centimeters, meters, feet, whatever it is for it. So perimeter is the distance around. Then, just this last Friday, we looked at area. And area is now you're looking inside of the shape or figure that you're looking at. So for area, give it 1 second. Okay, area, you're looking at the number of square units needed to cover the surface. So this is on page 322 in your math book. So I'm looking at how many centimeter squares did it take? Sometimes we can figure that out by doing the length times width. So for here, I'd go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times 6 gives me 6 times 6 gives me 36 square centimeters in here. So the area is how much is inside to cover a surface. And the last thing, which you just learned about yesterday, was volume. So now volume, we're talking more about a solid figure or a 3D, three-dimensional figure. So if you look at that, volume, it's the number of cubic units the figure contains. So some of you yesterday might have actually put your Legos or blocks or different things together and then create a solid figure and then just figure out how many it took to make that one figure. Okay, so let's get out of here. So those are the main lessons within that are going to be shown up on your open book test. So that means all of those pages that I just showed you in your book, you're going to want to make sure tomorrow you have your book with you so you can reference any of these pages. So tomorrow what you'll do is you'll come on and you'll go ahead and fill out the Google Forms. It's going to be a quiz. And what's going to go through, it'll say Google Forms quiz, and you'll go ahead and you can fill out, you'll have whatever amount of time you need to finish it and finish your Chapter 9 open book test. And you are more than welcome to use your book the whole way through to help you figure out some of these problems. Let me know if you have any questions. Today, I'd like you to go ahead and review with a few of the different games that I've listed below in your Google Classroom assignment to help yourself review before you have your open book test tomorrow. Have a great day, third grade. Bye.